Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you here today, and welcome to the latest installation of the Alliance Defending Freedom American Culture on Appeal Symposium series. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Lunch, coffee, water over there, restrooms to the right, and we're going to get started. My name is Carrie Kupek, and I am the Communications Director and Legal Counsel for ADF. ADF is the largest religious freedom nonprofit law firm in the world. And today we are happy to introduce to you some of the actual people behind many of the stories you have heard about in the news. These are the creative professionals, the Washington floral designer, the Kentucky t-shirt printer, and the Phoenix art studio owners, who have been told that putting their speech and religious freedom aside is, as a New Mexico Supreme Court judge said in an earlier case, the price of citizenship, a price that has included the loss of business, livelihood, and threat of jail and criminal penalties. The title of today's event is Conscience and Creative Professionals. You may be wondering why we decided to host this panel at this time. Well, for starters, conscience has gotten a lot of buzz in the last few months. If any of you have probably been aware, we are in the midst of a most unusual presidential race, and there have been many calls to vote your conscience. We've also heard a lot of "don't ask me to violate my conscience." And today you're going to meet people who could be your neighbors, who could be you, and who have been forced by the government to do just that. They are here to tell you their stories, what conscience means to them, and what's at stake, not just for them, but for all Americans. These cases are at various stages across the country, including a request for review currently at the United States Supreme Court in the Colorado cake artist case. He's not here today, but I will be talking about his case a little later. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a brief snapshot of where each case is at. We're going to start with Blaine. This is Blaine. Blaine Adamson owns On Originals in Lexington, Kentucky, which is a custom t-shirt outfitters and print shop. He declined to print expressive shirts promoting the Lexington Pride Festival, hosted by the Gay and Lesbian Services Organization, because he did not want to convey the messages printed on the shirts. He nevertheless offered to connect the organization to another printer that would produce the shirts for the same price that he would have charged. However, that same organization filed a complaint with the Lexington-Fayette Urban County Human Rights Commission and alleged illegal discrimination. The commission ruled against Blaine. However, the Kentucky State Trial Court ruled in favor of Blaine. And it should be noted, this is the only win in these cases thus far. Here's what the trial court said. In short, On Originals declining to print the shirts was based upon the message of the festival and not on the sexual orientation of its representatives or members. In point of fact, there is nothing in the record before the commission that the sexual orientation of any individual that had contact with On Originals was ever divulged or played any part in this case. So the state is appealing the ruling, and oral arguments have not yet been scheduled at the Kentucky Court of Appeals. So that's Blaine. Barronelle. This is Barronelle Stutzman. She has owned Arlene's Flowers in Richland, Washington for many years, and like Blaine, has for her entire career served and employed people who identify as LGBT. Despite this, the ACLU and the Washington Attorney General allege that she is guilty of unlawful discrimination because she declined to create custom floral arrangements for one same-sex ceremony of a longtime customer and friend. Barronelle lost the Washington State Trial Court level and asked for a direct appeal to the Washington State Supreme Court. Her case will be argued there November 15th, which is just a few weeks away. Breanna and Joanna, I'm blocking them, but here they are. They own a Phoenix custom art studio called Brush and Nib that specializes in hand painting, hand lettering, and calligraphy for weddings and other events. They are challenging a city ordinance that would force them to use their artistic talents to promote same-sex ceremonies. The ordinance also forbids the studio and its proprietors from publicly expressing their Christian belief that marriage is the union of one man and one woman, or explaining why they hold that view. Violation of this ordinance can result in up to $2,500 in fines and 6 months in jail per day for each day the artist is found to be in non-compliance. It should be noted that their case is a little bit of a different one. It's a pre-enforcement challenge. So they are challenging the law at issue before it's been applied to them for fear of what it will do. This is something called, like I said, it's a pre-enforcement challenge. It's a lawsuit that allows citizens to challenge a law, in this case, a law that threatens First Amendment freedoms before, like I said, the government enforces it against them. We just got news recently. The state trial court denied their request for a preliminary injunction, which just means this would have prevented this ordinance from being applied against them as the case moves forward. Oral arguments have not yet been scheduled at the trial court, and they have appealed that injunction ruling. Jack Phillips. Jack is not here today. He is the Colorado cake artist I mentioned earlier. He has owned Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado for many years. Because of his religious beliefs, he politely declined to create one custom wedding cake for a same-sex couple and offered the customer anything else in his shop. He was sued by the customer, lost his case at the Commission, the Colorado Court of Appeals, and the Colorado Supreme Court declined to take the case. He has now asked the United States Supreme Court to take his case. We should hear if they will decide to take it, probably sometime in January. He's not with us today, like I said, but I will be talking about his case later on. Mollie Hemingway. Mollie Hemingway is currently not being sued or suing anyone for her beliefs, and she is today's moderator. She is a senior editor at the Federalist. She's a frequent on-air news commentator and longtime journalist. I'm sure you've seen her at some point or another as you turn on the TV talking about the election. Her work has appeared in all kinds of media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, and I could go on and on. But before Mollie gets started, we will be hearing from Kelvin Cochran. Mr. Cochran is the former fire chief for the city of Atlanta. He is not an artist, but he certainly knows what it's like to lose his career because of his beliefs. Will you join me in welcoming Chief Cochran?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is good for us to be here. There are a couple of other housekeeping items I think are appropriate. In the event of an emergency and there is a need for evacuation, please let us make an orderly evacuation down the stairs to my left. And if there is a need or an occurrence of an emergency, I'm going to ask Blaine to be the one designated to call 911. Now I feel a lot better about getting started. I'm not a creative artist or a creative professional, but I do know what it's like to lose my career for speaking out or standing on my religious beliefs. And I'm honored to start this conversation with the short version of my story. I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana in the early 1960s, one of 6 kids. My dad left my mother, and my mother raised all 6 of us by herself. She never remarried. When I was 5 years old, after hearing sirens blazing outside of our door, the door of our shotgun house, we ran out the door and saw Shreveport firefighters fighting the fire in our neighbor's house, Miss Maddie. I was smitten on that day and at that moment, and I looked at my mom and brothers and sisters and said, I want to be a fireman when I grow up. In those days, the grown-ups told us that all of our dreams would come true in the United States of America if we believed in and have faith in God, if we go to school and get a good education. I don't know why they always said good in front of education, but they said get a good education, respect grown people, and treat other children like you want to be treated. And they said all of your dreams would come true. It is those principles and serving God faithfully as a Christian throughout my life that led to my family and career successes. In 1981, my childhood dream came true. I became the first African American for the Shreveport Fire Department, one of the first African Americans for the city of Shreveport. However, because I was one of the first African Americans, I faced many obstacles because of my race. And some of the fire stations, there were designated plates, forks, and spoons just for the black firefighters. In one fire station, I had to wash the dishes in scalding hot water and soap, and the captain always checked to make sure that it was hot enough. There was a designated bed in some of the fire stations. All fire stations at first did not have a black firefighter. On the shifts that did not have a black firefighter, it helped to have a designated bed so that the firefighters who came on duty on the other shifts could make sure that they were not sleeping on mattresses that were slept on by a black firefighter. And I faced a constant barrage of racial slurs. But I also had an insatiable belief that if I practiced the values that I had been taught as a child, I would eventually overcome those racial barriers, and through hard work and professionalism, I could eventually become recognized as an equal to my Shreveport firefighter brothers. And sure enough, in 1999, I became the first African American appointed to fire chief for the city of Shreveport. Then in 2008, I was blessed to become the fire chief in Atlanta, Georgia. And because of what I had previously experienced, I made a promise to myself that under my leadership, no one would ever have to go through the horrors of discrimination that I had endured because I was different from the majority. Using a strategic planning team, I created the Atlanta Fire Rescue Doctrine through a collaborative approach which established a culture of justice and equity for all the members of the department and how we would serve our community and one another. The task force included all people groups and demographics of the department, including women and members who identified themselves as LGBT. One of our core values that we identified to really create a culture where everyone looked forward to coming to work every day and eliminating any barriers that would hinder us from giving our very best was a core value we called ism-free. We wanted an atmosphere where there was no racism, sexism, cronyism, nepotism, favoritism, or territorialism, so that we could have the department that we all believed in our heart that we could become. After 20 months of serving under the leadership of the Honorable Mayor Shirley Franklin, I was appointed by President Barack Obama and confirmed by the U.S. Senate as the United States Fire Administrator, the nation's highest-ranking fire official. During my Senate confirmation hearing, a few of the members remarked that it was the most bipartisan and least controversial hearing that they had ever experienced. Less than 1 year later, the Honorable Mayor Kasim Reed recruited me back to the city of Atlanta, and I assumed my duties as fire chief of the city. In 2012, I was internationally recognized by my professional association, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, as the Career Fire Chief of the Year. But in late 2014, my 34-year career came to an abrupt halt when I was suspended for 30 days without pay after the city of Atlanta's officials who disagreed with Judeo-Christian beliefs about marriage learned that I had mentioned those beliefs in a book written on my own time for a Christian men Bible study. During the suspension, the city launched an investigation to determine whether my religious beliefs caused me to discriminate against anyone. I welcomed the investigation because I was confident that a just examination of my work towards inclusion, tolerance, and justice would dispel any concerns regarding my leadership integrity. My faith does not teach me to discriminate against anyone, but rather it actually reinforces and instructs me to love everyone without condition and to recognize the inherent dignity and worth of all peoples and to lay down my life if it was necessary for anyone in my community. After concluding its investigation, the city determined that I had never discriminated against anyone. Nevertheless, on January 6, 2015, the city of Atlanta terminated me anyway. It is still unthinkable to me that the very faith and patriotism that inspired my professional achievements is what the government ultimately used to bring my childhood dream come true, fairy tale career to an end. I simply wrote a book to encourage and inspire men to fulfill their purposes as husbands, fathers, and community leaders. Just a few paragraphs in a 162-page book address biblical teachings on marriage and sexuality, verses taken straight from the Holy Bible. Yet, Atlanta city officials, including Mayor Reed, made it clear that it was those religious beliefs that resulted in my suspension, termination, and ultimate investigation that really exonerated me of their concerns. Following my termination, an Atlanta City Council member stated, and I quote, when you are a city employee and your thoughts, beliefs, and opinions are different from that of the city's, you have to check them at the door, end quote. The city's actions do not reflect the true tolerance and diversity that has always set America apart from other nations. Equal rights and true tolerance means that regardless of your position on marriage, you should be able to peaceably live out your beliefs and not be marginalized or suffer discrimination at the hands of the government. I strongly encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to consider this perspective today as you hear from creative professionals that have similar experience. And thank you so much for your participation.
If people would like to come sit down. Once again, I'm Mollie Hemingway. It's a real honor to be here with these brave people who are dealing with these very serious issues. I'm a journalist who's interested in religious liberty, and I've written about it at great length. So many times when we write about religious liberty, it's kind of dry. We're talking about the underlying principles at stake, talking to attorneys, and we get a little glimmer of the people that are involved in this. This is a real treat today to actually hear from people whose cases are at play. And also, I think for many of us who are not journalists, we think about how we would handle a situation if our beliefs, our deeply held beliefs, came into conflict with a government edict. And so this gives us a chance to see how various people have engaged that and how they have come to deal with those problems that arise as government expands in scope and size. So I just have a couple of questions for our panelists here, and maybe we can begin with you, Blaine. Yeah, it's always fun to be able to go first. But
wonderful.
You're more than a T-shirt printer. You're a T-shirt designer. Can you explain the distinction there?
Well, from the beginning, it was always about the design. And when we started the company, it was back in college. And one thing that I couldn't stand is Christian T-shirts. They were the worst. I mean, they were so cheesy. And like an example would be, you know, the old slogan back then was have a Coke and a smile. So they would change it to say, have Jesus and a smile, something, it was awful. So we kind of set out to say, you know, let's create something that people actually want to wear. And, you know, 20 years later, that's really what's going on in the company. People call us and they'll say, hey, I've got a Bible verse, or, you know, we've got a camp coming up, Christian camp, and we want to impress this on the kids. So we'll take that and create something off of it that will, I mean, our hope is the kids will actually want to wear it after the event, that it speaks a clear message, but when they get home, they'll take it out of the drawer and wear it, versus kind of be embarrassed of it and say, I don't want to put that on. So it was always about the design from the beginning. So, yeah.
Great. Barronelle, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the gentleman who is suing you, Rob Ingersoll?
Rob has been a favorite customer of mine for over 10 years. I love working with Rob. He would come in and tell me what kind of event he was celebrating, whether it was birthday or anniversary or party. He'd tell me the theme, and then he'd go pick out these unusual vases and containers, and he would hand them to me, and he would say, do your thing, which I absolutely love, because I got to get out of the box and make something different and unique. And I loved doing the arrangements for Rob, and he thoroughly enjoyed them. So we had a good relationship.
And can you tell us a little bit about what happened that led to this lawsuit?
Rob had been in twice before into the shop and asking for me and told the girls that he was going to get married. So I knew why he was coming in. So I went home and I talked to my husband. And we discussed it in length. And the things that our faith teaches us is that marriage is between a man and a woman, and it symbolizes Christ and his relationship with the church. So when Rob came in to talk to me about his wedding, I just gently put my hands on Rob's, and I said, I'm sorry, Rob. I can't do your wedding because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. And he said he understood. We talked about his mom walking him down the aisle. We talked about why he decided to get married after living with Kurt for so long. We talked about how he got engaged. We just chit-chatted for a while, and Rob said, would you recommend another florist? And I said, sure. And I recommended 3 that I knew would do him a good job. Rob and I hugged each other, and Rob left. he went home and told his partner. His partner, Kurt, put something on Facebook that was simply, she has a right to her beliefs, but she hurt our feelings. And it went viral. From there, we have 5 lines in our business. And for 2 weeks solid, we had nothing but death threats, bombing threats, computer threats, picketing threats. I had to contact the police. I had to get a security system in. I had to change the way I go to work, come home. And even today, we're in constant threat of new customers coming in that might harm us. The Attorney General and the ACLU, without a complaint from Rob, filed a lawsuit against us personally and corporately. So we basically right now, if we lose our lawsuit, the ACLU attorney fees are over $1 million now, and will probably be over $2 million by the time this is finished. So we stand to lose everything we've worked for and own.
Barronelle, I just want to share, I was discussing religious liberty on an NPR program a few years back, and somehow the topic of your case came up. And the person who I was talking with said something about how you were nothing more than a bigot and you couldn't throw some sticks and flowers in a jar. And I mentioned that the case involved a customer that you had served for 9 years, that you had served faithfully. This was a distinction on the type of service that was being provided. And I distinctly remember the host and or the other participants said, "Wait, really?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, that's totally different. You know, this is totally different than the type of case that has been presented in the media." But I want to ask you about that thing about throwing sticks and flowers in a jar. Is that how you would describe your work as a creative professional?
I hope not. No, when we do weddings, they're very involved. I spend hours and months with the bride and groom and to find out what their idea is, what they want to convey in the wedding, what message they want, what the event they want to have. So we spend all that time and to create something that is perfect for them and symbolizes what they are to each other and their ceremony. And many times I'll go in and help the bride get dressed, also buttons on a tux. I greet guests as they come in, and there's a lot of involvement in a wedding. And for me to create something that would celebrate something that's totally against my belief, that would dishonor Christ, and that's something that I could not do.
Thanks. Joanna and Breanna, can you tell us a little bit about how your business got started?
Yeah, we started about a year ago, a little over, actually in May of last year. We'd been working together and planning this business since January of 2015. And so we officially filed in May, and we've both been artists just on our own for a while, just doing that in our spare time, and decided we wanted to make a business out of it.
And you have different specialties, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm the painter, artist of the studio, and Joanna's the calligrapher.
Yeah.
And how did you meet, or how did you get to know that you were both interested in this?
Yeah, we go to the same church, and so we had met in a group that we're a part of, and we were talking. I was actually getting ready to start the business on my own, just doing calligraphy, but I wanted that painting element, and I'm not a painter. So I was really struggling with that. And then in talking with her, she was new to the group and looking for work, and I found out that she was a painter, and so I thought, I wonder if she would want to work on something like this. So I talked with her about it, and she was like, I've never done something small scale like that, but I'll give it a try. So I saw the first thing that she created, and it was absolutely what I was looking for, and so from there we started collaborating, and it just went from there.
And what has it been like having a business together? What do you enjoy about it?
Well, it's been a blast. We love just creating art together, especially because we pull ideas from each other, and we just kind of, most of the art we do is custom, so our clients will bring us an idea, and we kind of take that idea together and put it into something custom and unique and beautiful for them, their event, their home, whatever the piece of art is for. So it's just been really fun to be able to work together.
What do you create? Can you tell us a little bit about the actual products you're creating?
Yeah, we create for all sorts of things, but our favorite and the majority of our business, custom, is for weddings. So we'll do invitations, we'll do stuff for the reception, signs, menus, place cards, all that kind of decor stuff that makes it really special.
Great.
So.
Okay, back to you, Blaine. Just a second here. Pardon me. Oh, right there. It was right there on top. That's great. Sometimes people who are criticizing your case say that what you're doing is just a T-shirt and that you should be able to just print a T-shirt. What do you say to that criticism?
Well, again, I kind of scratched my head at the idea that it's just a T-shirt, and I'll kind of throw this example out there with that imagine I just had a check mark on the shirt, and but you look at it a little closer and you see that it's a Nike swoosh. Well, suddenly just the image, it has no words on it, it's just a check mark, but you see that it's a Nike swoosh. Suddenly there's power behind that logo. Suddenly your mind is flooded with ideas, whether it's vintage Michael Jordan or LeBron James or a sports team you were a part of, shoes with a Nike swoosh. That companies spend millions of dollars to promote something on T-shirts. It's a very credible advertising avenue. And so, I would disagree with that because companies, businesses across the country spend millions of dollars to use T-shirts to speak a message.
And was this the first time you've ever turned down work?
No. That was consistently, and the judge noticed that in our case that, we had declined messages over and over again throughout the years. I mean, even churches, I've had people come, and this one case, somebody wanted to have Jesus on a pirate ship, and it just, there's silly stuff that you all the time see that.
I think that's a great idea. I don't know.
Yeah. But bottom line, we've had to decline messages over the years, and I've always set it up to where there's a local company who will honor whatever price I gave, and so that's our normal practice to send it to that other company, just so the customer has an avenue to make sure they have a place to go if it's something my conscience won't allow me to print.
So in the case that we're dealing with here, did you do that, and what happened?
Yes, I mentioned the other company. I said it was something that they would handle the order, same price, everything would work fine, but that's kind of when the conversation ended.
Right.
And they hung up, and that was it.
But were they able to get T-shirts?
Yeah, actually, good news for them. They got their shirts for free because other companies stepped in and they took care of it for them, which I was happy that they were taken care of. That's kind of the end goal here. So
I'm curious about that with you, Barronelle. Were you willing to refer to another business or?
Absolutely. Yeah, I recommended 3 Floors to Rob, and I chose them very carefully because I knew he wanted custom work that was designed for him, and I wanted him to do a good job for him.
And there was something else you said that gave me pause. The harassment that your company received when you took this stand, was that difficult for you, knowing that this affected people other than you, this stand you were taking?
It was very difficult for me and my staff. The things that came through the mail and through the phone were things I couldn't repeat. But it's okay, because the message that comes to my mind is that God will blind their hearts from the truth. So people that spew out that kind of hate are very hurtful inside. So it's okay. It's okay. This is great as you guys are starting your business, Joanna and Breanna. Think about all the joy that can come from this. But what do you like about being entrepreneurs?
I think the art part of it, obviously, getting to create. We love what we do, and we enjoy getting to take those ideas that the brides or any of our other clients bring and just make something really beautiful and unique out of it. And I think as millennial entrepreneurs, we bring a unique perspective and a fresh twist to the art that we create. So we're able to kind of look at traditional ideas of art and then add something fresh to it and make it modern and new and the brides really love it and all of our clients. So it's just fun.
There's something interesting about your case, which I actually am not even sure if you can talk about, which is that the nature of the law in question means you can't talk about your beliefs on marriage. I'm wondering, actually, your attorney is here?
Yes.
John Scruggs? Yes. So I think this is an interesting... This is perhaps something that, we all have, as I think of it as a private citizen, we all wonder what would happen if the government came after us, or if laws were passed or somehow came into being that would affect our ability to practice our religion as we want, or speak our minds on things. This, in some ways, all of these cases are ominous and chilling, but this seems to me very chilling. What should people take away from this case?
I think it's a very good point. And just to understand the nature of the law they're challenging, brushing to clients, it says that no business can publish any communication that state or implies that someone is unwelcome, unacceptable, or undesirable. That type of language. That language is so broad that it could prevent a business from posting on their own website, "I disagree with same-sex marriage," because that could make someone feel unwelcome. And we just flip it around, it could also prevent a business from posting on their website a statement that says, "I disagree with Christianity." Because again, that could make someone feel unwelcome. And it's very scary when the government has the power to tell a business, or really anyone, you can post this statement on your website, on the internet, you can't post that statement, because one of those messages is too unwelcoming or not acceptable. In that situation, really, we no longer live in a free marketplace of ideas. We live in a society where the government can tell us what to say and believe. So that should be concerning for not just people of faith, of all faiths, but people of all beliefs, when the government can tell us what to say and what we can't say.
One other thing, the state trial court, in their ruling denying the preliminary injunction, had some really interesting things to say about there is nothing about custom wedding invitations made for same-sex couples that is expressive. Later, thus the creation of custom lettering or artwork displayed on plaintiffs' wedding invitations and related wedding products does not constitute expressive speech. That seems insane to me.
It is a bit strange. I'm only a lawyer. I have no creativity at all. I can't draw or paint or do anything of those things, but I do write words. And you would think that words communicate messages, and so does paintings. It's a strange world that we live in, that when you can put on an invitation the words, "Come join the celebration of this marriage," and that doesn't communicate a message. That seems very bizarre to me, and that's why we feel pretty confident in our case that we'll eventually win.
It's sort of nothing but message and nothing but creative expression. So to say that it isn't those things is very interesting also.
All right, I'm going to go sit down, get off the couch here.
Great. Carrie, maybe you can give us a little update too. You're representing Jack Phillips, the cake baker in Colorado. My colleague David Harsani at the Federalist just wrote a piece on that case, which was very illuminating and interesting. Can you tell us where things stand with this?
And David's piece was a great one.
Thank you.
Jack Phillips is a Christian man. He's been running his bake shop, Masterpiece, in Lakewood, Colorado for many years. And like I said earlier, he declined one custom wedding cake for a same-sex couple and said, you can have anything in the shop. I can't create something that violates my beliefs, promoting a message with which I disagree, which would be marriage there. The commission ruled against him when the lawsuit was filed. What was disturbing to me is what the commission said about Jack for this 30-second polite exchange. And they compared Jack to perpetrators of the Holocaust and slave owners. This was extra upsetting because Jack's father had fought in World War II and was part of the D-Day invasion and got injured. I believe it was at, Omaha Beach. And he ended up receiving a Purple Heart later on, but he refused to stop there because he wanted to go on with his troops, and he ended up being part of the group that was the first to liberate Jewish people from a concentration camp. So you can imagine how Jack must have felt when the commission compared him to the very people that his father sought and liberated people from. Another thing that's interesting about Jack's case is that the same people, within the same area, the same commission, the same law, there were 3 bakeries there. There are a lot of bakeries in that area, and someone went to those bakeries and asked them to create custom cakes expressing religious views that disagreed with same-sex marriage. Well, that same commission that ruled against Jack under that same exact statute said that was okay. It was just okay. And so you look at that and you have to wonder, what is going on here? You know, we're at the Supreme Court now, and Jack has asked the Supreme Court to take a look at his case, to take that case. And you know, there's no question this guy's a cake artist. In fact, I think it was season 2 of Cake Boss. I'm sure some of you have seen that show. It was Jack's work that was featured in the commercials promoting the upcoming season of that show. And in fact, if you were to go back and look at the commercials, it's Jack's hands and Jack's work that's actually featured on camera. So here we have an artist being forced by the government to, obviously, like everyone else here, promote a message with which they disagree, and being called some really horrific things along the way. So we'll see what happens and if the Supreme Court decides to take that or not.
Thank you. Barronelle, you alluded to this already, but you're being sued in both your personal capacity and corporate capacity. You stand to lose everything, your retirement, your living place, if you lose your case. And because Washington State, where you live, is a community property state, that means that your husband, Darrell, also stands to lose everything in his name. It's worth noting for people who haven't been following this case that with respect to this is unprecedented level of attack on a person practicing her religious liberty. You were offered a settlement and you declined to take it. Can you tell us why?
I wasn't offered a settlement. I was offered an ultimatum. Either you will do as I tell you to do, you will think the way I think, you will perform the way I think you should perform and create. And if you don't, I'm going to destroy you. I don't call that a settlement. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in our free rights. And it's not just us. It's all of us, whether you're religious or not. If we do not stand up and fight for this, soon we'll have absolutely nothing to stand up for.
I think that's a good place to leave things, unless you have anything else you think would be good to mention, Carrie.
Well, we haven't heard from Chief yet. And I was thinking we could hear a little bit about Chief's perspective on this, on how his faith, and Chief, I was thinking we could talk a little bit about, you talked earlier about your faith motivating you, driving you, inspiring you to do what you do. And how has that played out even now?
Well, you know, all of my life, since I became a Christian from my early age, my family has been heavily involved in Sunday schools, vacation Bible schools, Baptist training unions. I mean, we just constantly fed on the faith. And one of the terms that describe our faith is a living faith, which simply means that it is a faith that when you live it out through faith and obedience, there should be evidence that it is real. And so growing up in poverty in Shreveport, Louisiana, eating mayonnaise sandwiches when the welfare checks and the food stamps, groceries ran out, and having utilities cut off from time to time, you know, having a dream that I wanted to be a firefighter one day, having a dream that I would be a father and a husband one day. You know, I was taught that your faith and obedience to that would cause all that stuff to happen, especially in the United States of America. And so living out that faith, I'm one of those American Christians who have, my life is proof that it is a living faith, that what Jesus said, he came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. Well, none of my children know what it's like to have to eat mayonnaise sandwiches and drink sugar water because we ran out of groceries. They don't know what it's like for our water to be turned off and our lights to be turned off because we have a living faith. I became a firefighter. In fact, I became the highest fire official in the United States of America because it is a living faith. So in our faith, we have to, if we believe it, we should live it out. It should be a public demonstration of our faith, so that when people are so curious about how is it that you can have this life, and then we can point them to Jesus Christ. As a matter of fact, Jesus specifically said, if you deny me publicly, I'll deny you before my Father in heaven. So when we have to make a choice according to the way I was raised, when you got to make a choice between your faith and your job, you choose your faith, and that's what I did.
I'm actually curious on that for the rest of the panelists too. I can't imagine that you had a lot of advance thought or preparation going into the battles that you face. Or did you? I'm curious, did you think this might happen, or what happened when this fight came to you?
Well, I can say, from my experiences personally, and from what I have learned over my life, and you really don't think about the totality of the preparation until you've actually passed that moment of having made that decision. But God has been preparing me for that moment all of my life. I believe He never puts us in those circumstances unless He's convinced in His heart that He has adequately prepared us for it.
Just speaking personally, I am a Christian, and when I took my confirmation vows, we take a pledge in the Lutheran Church that you will suffer all up to and including death rather than renounce the faith. And I always thought that sounded really romantic, like something that used to happen to Christians or people in far-off lands. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that this suffering, of course, happening globally, can in fact deal with your loss of life. But it frequently deals with loss of reputation, anger from family members, other persecutions that you didn't necessarily realize were possible. It does seem to me, though, one thing that I think is very interesting about your cases, as well as other cases we hear of people standing up for their faith, they seem to have this strength that allows them to fight these battles. Where do you find your source of strength?
My source is strength. Excuse me. We've all been through trials and tribulations in our life that have brought us to where we are, and they aren't necessarily things that we want to go through, but we're put through. And one of the things that, a couple of things that I've been through, had some really hard times in my life, which I won't go into, but right after I was married, I found out I had breast cancer and my father passed away. And I think God took all those things that I didn't understand to use Him to prepare me for what He has for me today. God doesn't need me. All I have to offer Him is my sin. But He says if we seek Him out and are obedient, He will take care of us. And that's what I count on.
Do you have anything to add, Blaine?
Yeah. What was the question again? I got caught up in Barronelle.
I do too. I cry every time she talks. But I think it's interesting. Other people, we're all learning about these cases, and we're all wondering when this fight might come to us. You guys are already experiencing the fight. But how do you have the strength to take this on? It'd be so much easier to just succumb, and you guys are not doing that. So I'm just curious, where's this strength coming from?
Well, it definitely through our relationship with Jesus Christ. I mean, my life and my worship of God is not just confined to a building. It's how I live my life. It's how I love my wife. It's the TV shows I watch. It's how I work. It's how I treat my neighbors. All that is an act of worship. And so if at the end of the day, God can look at me and say, well done, my good and faithful servant. I mean, that's kind of the hope of this journey that I'm on. And it's really the Word of God. I feel like just, you talk about God preparing you for something, and just as the more you read the Scriptures and you get the truth of God, it's kind of like this guide that helps keep you in the right, because society's views are going to change and shift, but God doesn't change. And so, He's my strength. He's the thing I go back to, and I say, okay, God, whatever it takes, whatever the cost is, I'm okay with it, because my hope is in you, not in man. So that's it.
Another thing I'm curious about from each of you is whether you have received support from surprising quarters. So often when we talk about these issues, it seems that there are these extreme sides and it's, extreme partisanship on this topic. Is that how it has been in your life, or have you received support from people who maybe disagree with you personally but support your right to religious expression?
Yeah, it definitely happened with us. Locally, some of our employees who are homosexual, who are, we have some that we still employ, but the ones who weren't with the company had called us and said, "Hey, Blaine, I worked with you for years. If you need me to stand up with you and kind of explain this, I'll do it." People willing to do that. Then nationally, there was a lesbian-owned screen print company who came out in support of us, and they said, "Look, you need to stand up because we don't want to print messages either that the government would require us to print." So they kind of get it. They understand that it's not just a Christian issue, that when the government wants to come and enforce us as printers, as artists, to do things against our conscience, that's not okay. That's kind of the line. So, yeah, but to answer the question, absolutely, we got support on both sides. Even people that disagreed with my position still understood my right to be able to do this.
Great.
Yes, we had a gentleman right after this happened. He called and he says, "I'm a gay man." He said, "I have $5,000 in savings." And he said, "I will give it to you because I think what they're doing to you is wrong." And he said, "I know I'll be ostracized by the gay community." He said, "But I don't care." And we have two lesbian women that have dealt with us for years, and they continue to come in today. And they said, "You've never, ever treated us poorly. You've always respected us and waited on us, and we really appreciate it. We will continue to shop here." So there is encouragement in that. And the cards and the letters and the phone calls and the prayers are overwhelming. So there's many blessings that come from this.
Chief, I thought it might be fun for some of the Senate staff here, because I see there are some people here who work over on the Hill. This is, you've been here before. You went through a Senate confirmation hearing, and there were some interesting things said to you at that time. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. I just enjoyed the entire process, how the staffers at FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security really prepared me for days and days and days and days and days to actually meet with the staffers first. And then we met with the staffers. They grilled, and drilled and asked all the tough questions. And they were so tough. By the time I got in front of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, it was a whole lot easier than I had anticipated. But it was really a joy because the questions that they were asking were directly associated with my core conviction of what firefighters do in our country, and that's lay their lives on the line, and the prevention and training that is necessary through an emergency preparedness through the U.S. Fire Administration that's necessary to take our profession to the highest level. And so across both sides of the aisle, they were very pleased with my responses, and they had very favorable comments to say afterwards. And it was one of the shortest that they said that they'd ever experienced, one of the least controversial and most bipartisan. So that was an honor for me.
If only you could be nominated for everything, and then we could have nice, calm. But at that, when you did have your hearing, you were asked why you were willing to take on this work, why you wanted to do this work, how much it would disrupt your life. What did you tell them?
I just felt I could make a difference. I believe in our Constitution. I personalized the preamble of the United States Constitution, especially the part for our profession, ensure domestic tranquility. That summarizes what the fire service responsibility is to our country, ensure domestic tranquility. And through my participation in our professional associations over the years, I felt I had a firm grasp on the national issues that impacted the fire and emergency services industry, and I had relationships that I could use to collaborate and partner to make a difference at the federal level.
And Senator Carper in that hearing said that he thought you best exemplified what it meant to have a heart of a servant, and he asked you where he thought that came from. What did you tell him?
It came from my faith. I was raised that way. You know, when you come from meager beginnings and your hope is God and the Constitution, and it actually works, you know, it really drives your motive for everything you do in life.
And Breanna and Joanna, anything else you would like to add here?
Barronelle, I know I've heard you talk about this before, but the gentleman that's suing you, Rob, if he was here today, what would you say to him?
I'd be so excited to see Rob. I would hug him, I would catch up on his life, and I would serve him another 10 years. I miss him.
Well, I think that concludes our time for now. If you're interested in coming up and chatting with people who have been sitting here today, I know they'd more than welcome it. I'd more than welcome that. I appreciate you all coming out on this lunch day, and especially in these blocked off streets around here. I know it was a little bit hard to get in today. And thank you, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks.